The concept of key performance indicator is well known and established also within small and medium enterprises to monitor the performances of a company. We attempted to transfer this concept to facilitate the assessment of readiness level toward Industry 4.0. For this reason, the topics of today's presentation is how the key readiness indicators can be used to assess the digital level of manufacturing companies, and particularly how they can be used to assess the level of small and medium enterprises. In doing this, we will also look at how the key readiness indicators offer relevant information supporting particularly small and medium enterprises to overcome specific challenges they face toward digital transformation. After this brief introduction, let me introduce myself. My name is Riccardo Brozzi, and I led the conduction of the present study at Fraunhofer Italia, a research center doing applied research projects on the topic of digital transformation with companies, mainly small and medium enterprises from different sectors. For today, I prepared the following agenda, in which we will look first of all at the background of this research. Afterwards, I will briefly introduce you the concept of key readiness indicators and how we tested in a case study with manufacturing companies. In the last part of the presentation, I will show you the main results and findings, and in this part, I will also provide some insights on the limits and future research on this topic. Let's start with the background of this research. In the background of this research, there is the increasingly researched topic of Industry 4.0 and small and medium enterprises. Several studies indicate the high potential of applying Industry 4.0 concepts and technologies in the context of small and medium enterprises, although acknowledging a higher number of challenges that SMEs face compared to large companies, such as, for instance, the existence of financial and knowledge constraint, as well as lacking strategies and visions for digital transformation. Besides this, both small and medium enterprises and large companies share something. They share the supporting tools easing the planning of Industry 4.0 in the business strategy. According to our research, there are several assessment models existing which evaluate the digital level of companies and their readiness toward the application of Industry 4.0 concept. However, from the research we conducted, such tools have more often than not limited focus on small and medium enterprises. And the results of such tools are sometimes complex to interpret, and the filling out of the surveys are relatively time consuming for SMEs not having several resources dedicated to research and development. Against this background, the objective of our study was to adapt on the one hand, the assessment of the digital level to the requirements of SMEs, while developing, on the other hand, ready-to-use indicators, easing the interpretation of results and fasten the decision-making process of small and medium enterprises for prioritizing areas where to intervene. Our aim was to capitalize on the existing knowledge of indicators, such as the key performance indicators among companies and also within SMEs, and this concept guided us in the development of a key performance indicator, a set of indicators actually, to assess the readiness level of a company. Let me now introduce you the main features of the key readiness indicator. They are expressed in three levels: low, medium, and high. And the key readiness indicators are displayed together with the overall digital level of the companies, providing additional information in three specific areas: strategy, awareness, and competencies. The metrics to build the key readiness indicators are embedded in the self-assessment survey called Digital Check that companies fill out to self-assess their digital level. The Digital Check comprises 26 questions to be rated according to a 5-point Likert scale, and they are distributed across 5 dimensions: strategy, process, Industry 4.0, employees, and IT and data security. The overall digital level is also displayed according to 3 levels, namely low, medium, and high digital level of the company. The key readiness indicators are generated according to the ratings assigned to pairs of questions within same of different dimensions. Let's take as an example the key readiness indicator strategy. It considers the combination of ratings of 2 questions within the dimension strategy. As you can see from the table, a relatively low or high ratings of both questions will imply a low or high key readiness indicators respectively. In the final display of the results, a text describes the level of each key readiness indicators achieved considering the levels of ratings between the pairs of questions considered. Let's now see in the next slide the application of such a model in our case study of manufacturing companies. We tested the key readiness indicators within a sample of 65 manufacturing companies located in the central Italian region of Le Marche. The companies were mainly operating in the machine construction sectors, and in the sample we had 46 small and medium enterprises according to the number of employees. Stratified by turnover, we had 41 small and medium enterprises. Here, the overall amount of company equals 60, as the indication of the category of early turnover was optional in the survey, and therefore not the entire sample provided this information. In the last row, you find the digital readiness level that the companies self-assessed. Here, you can see that the majority of the companies assessed an average or high digital level. Our aim in the study, on the base of the structure of the data, was to find out whether associations existed between the size of the company in terms of employees and the digital level, as well as how the key readiness indicators were distributed according to 3 main characteristics of the companies, namely size in terms of number of employees, the yearly turnover in euros, and the digital level of the company. In the next slide, I'm going to present you the main results of the statistical analysis. In the sample considered, most manufacturing companies achieved an average or high overall digital level. Only about 5% of the companies self-assessed a low digital level. We found no significant association between the company size and the digital level achieved. However, looking at the distribution of the key readiness indicators across varying company characteristics, we found that a limited percentage of companies with a high key readiness indicators were small and medium enterprises, while almost the entire sample of large companies achieved a high level of key readiness indicator for strategy. Therefore, although no significant association between the size and the digital level existed, SMEs showed a lower strategic readiness, signaled by a relatively low key readiness indicators in the majority of small and medium enterprises. In this specific case, only 18.9% of small and medium enterprises achieved a high key readiness indicator for strategy, compared to almost 70% of large companies. The same applies also for the key readiness indicators competencies. In this case, only a small percentage of small and medium enterprises, namely 43.5, achieved a high key readiness indicator for competencies, while almost 90% of large companies achieved a high level of the key readiness indicator competencies. This also indicates, regardless of the missing association between company size and digital level, a lower perceived adequacy of skills in small and medium enterprises compared to large companies. Finally, another example is the key readiness indicators considering the early turnover. Even in this case, only half of the small and medium enterprises achieved a high level of key readiness indicators for competencies compared to almost the entire sample of companies classified by their yearly turnover. This brings me to the last part of my presentation, in which I will draw the main conclusions from our study. The research we conducted at Fraunhofer Italia demonstrates that small and medium enterprises still lack a clear strategic orientation toward Industry 4.0 and relevant competencies compared to large companies. This confirms the evidence collected in the scientific literature which exists on the topic of Industry 4.0 and small and medium enterprises. Against this background, the analysis of key readiness indicators enabled us to add relevant information to better understand the dynamics of readiness among manufacturing companies and particularly the dynamics of SMEs toward Industry 4.0. As outlook of this research, we see the possibility to extend the approach of key readiness indicators as a sort of key performance indicators for other realms of interest, including the measurement of readiness among companies which aim to shift their production scheme toward the flexible mass customization paradigm. To continue with research activities on this topic, we acknowledge the need to overcome specific limitations of our study. For instance, the necessity to extend the survey sample to other geographical areas and, in general, to increase the size of the sample. We are convinced that this will enable consolidating the approach and deepen the knowledge of the dynamics between manufacturing companies and the assessment of their readiness toward Industry 4.0 and of particular interest, the dynamics which relate small and medium enterprises and their transition to digital companies. Thank you for your attention.